Let's start this episode a bit differently. I'm going to drop you right in the middle of a story. You're in the bathroom, staring down at a positive pregnancy test. Now, if you feel like this doesn't apply to you, just bear with me here and imagine it anyway. Or imagine this is happening to someone you know and love. You know you don't want to give birth, so what do?
If you want an abortion, first you have to find out where you could get one. And your choices are often an abortion clinic, right? Or a Planned Parenthood or that sort of a thing, which means everybody's going there for an abortion, which means often there's picketers outside or some sort of rallying thing happening around that. And sometimes that appointment is in 2 weeks or in 3 weeks or in 4 weeks. Sometimes you, in that waiting, will be too far along for that clinic to be able to take you.
You have to make arrangements to go to a clinic or doctor's office, which means finding childcare, requesting time off of work, and making sure you have transportation. And that can be harder than it seems, when the average American is over 86 miles from their nearest provider.
And then, let's say you get an appointment and you go. There's 15 other people or 20 other people in the waiting room, and you know why they're all there, because this is an abortion clinic and all this stuff is happening, and you wait there. Maybe not be called at your appointment time, which is pretty common for all medical clinics. Depending on what state you're in, at that point, you've done all of this, and they say, cool, we've done all this stuff, but our state, like the state that I went to medical school in, requires that you need to now wait 24 hours before you have your abortion.
Even when you get through all of this, you have to pay for it. An average cost of $600. But what if you don't have that kind of money lying around? Maybe you even reached out to one of the many abortion funds in the US, a pool of mutual aid designed to help folks pay for abortion care. But the local fund that serves your area couldn't cover the entire cost of your care. But finally, after leaping all of these hurdles, you get your small handful of pills. You take the first one in front of the doctor, but after that, you take the rest by yourself in the comfort of your own home. Looking back, maybe it feels like the majority of the time spent ending this pregnancy was preamble. Why would you have to wait so long and pay so much? In partnership with Act Blue, this is Build the Change, a show about the people at the center of progress. I'm your host, Alok Vadmenon. I'm an author, poet, actor, and advocate, and your companion for this trip around the country. We're in search of the most compelling causes and stories from the candidates, activists, and everyday people driving them forward. Today, we're talking about abortion access, specifically how a few pills and a really common medical technology could bring abortion care to more people who need it. But there's still a gap. How do people pay for it? That's exactly why the three healthcare providers we're talking about today came together to meet the need. They're leveraging the power of telehealth to expand access to people who are seeking abortions, whether they live close to a clinic or not, whether they can get time off or not. And they're also working to make sure people can afford their care. At a time when abortion access can change depending on a whole host of variables, it's more important than ever. Here's one example of that playing out right now. On March 26, 2024, the Supreme Court heard arguments on a case seeking stricter regulations for abortion pills. We'll return to this case near the end of the episode, but one thing is clear: abortion access remains an ongoing battleground. Let's go back to that scenario at the top of the episode. But this time, you don't have to find childcare or wade through protesters or even leave the house. You can just log onto your computer, talk to a doctor, and get your pills in the mail to take in the privacy of your own home. This is actually an option that people have today, but there's still one major challenge. It needs to be paid for, and the usual route, going to an abortion fund, sometimes isn't enough.
We were contacting all kinds of abortion funds and asking them to help us to help cover our patient costs when they couldn't afford it. And a lot of the funds were either saying that they had restrictions from their donors, that they couldn't do this, or they just didn't know enough about telehealth abortion, that they didn't feel comfortable doing it, or a variety of other things that they just, were concerned about it.
Accessible virtual abortion care changes the game for so many people. So when three healthcare providers kept running into this funding problem, they decided to do something about it.
I am Christy Pitney, they, she pronouns. I am a nurse practitioner and a nurse midwife.
Christy is one of the main characters of our story today. The we she was talking about are the two colleagues she'd go on to tackle this problem with.
My name is Ruchi Kaul. I'm a family medicine physician and abortion provider.
You heard Ruchi at the top of the episode, painting our scenario.
My name is Julie Jenkins, she, her, hers. I'm a nurse practitioner with over 20 years of sexual and reproductive health experience.
Ruchi, Julie, and Christy are all located in different areas of the East Coast, New Jersey, Maine, and Maryland, respectively. Their work in healthcare is how each of them discovered the problem they go on to tackle together. And what came through in their conversation most of all was their dedication to doing what's best for patients. Christy talked about her passion for advocacy.
I would say with nurse midwifery in particular, but also nurse practitioners, there's really like a big advocacy piece, both advocating for our career to be able to serve more people and do more things, but also advocating for our patients so that they get the best care that they can.
Ruchi left a clinic job to become an independent care provider, with patient care at the forefront of her mind.
I was like, I want to practice medicine. I want to practice it well. I want to practice it ethically. And I want to do it in a way that I am satisfied that I'm doing the best job possible and my patients are satisfied getting the care that they want.
And Julie came from a lineage of healthcare providers. Her mother was a nurse, and her stepfather was an OBGYN.
I knew exactly what I wanted to do. I'm going to be a women's health nurse practitioner, and this is what I'm going to do.
To understand why Christy, Julie, and Ruchi had to come together at all, we need a mini history lesson. The challenges funding telehealth abortion care and the stigma that surrounds medical abortion started back when the French developed mifepristone, also known as the modern abortion pill, was first approved in the United States.
In 2000, when Miffy was first approved, I was doing the abortion counseling at Planned Parenthood in Portland, Maine.
Julie has been a reproductive health nurse since the 90s. She and her colleagues often call mifepristone Miffy for short.
We thought, oh, this is going to change everything.
Essentially, all mifepristone does is stop the production of progesterone, which stops the development of a fetus. A medication abortion, unlike a procedural abortion, which requires instruments, is achieved with one dose of Miffy to stop the pregnancy. That's followed by a course of another pill, misoprostol, to induce bleeding. In the early days of Miffy, practitioners were still used to only performing procedural abortions. This medicine was new, unfamiliar. Julie recalls spending hours walking patients through every remote risk of using the medication.
Because it was early on and we didn't know, and we were trying to do our best, and so many people would decide, no, I'm just going to have a procedural abortion. Over time, we've gotten more clear on what is required for the medication, but we've gotten a lot more clear on, the counseling and on what people need to know.
Once upon a time, doctors and patients alike were unfamiliar with this cutting-edge medicine. After 20 years of learning and caution, we now know that mifepristone has a similar safety profile to Tylenol. It's very low risk. And according to Planned Parenthood, the medication abortion process works somewhere between 95 and 99% of the time. But this overly cautious attitude about medication abortion showed up in more than just nurses over-explaining to patients. When mifepristone was approved, the FDA imposed a REMS program. That stands for Risk Evaluation and Mitigation Strategy. It's a rare set of safety precautions, usually reserved for medicine, that could cause serious side effects. The additional rules are specific to each drug, but the FDA asserted that Miffy couldn't be provided by a pharmacy, only by a registered doctor under their direct supervision in the clinic.
So mifepristone is the only drug that is approved by the FDA that has this ridiculous strategy. And it's actually a really, 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 really safe drug.
That's Ruchi again.
The medication could not be carried by a pharmacy. It had to be directly distributed from the doctor to the patient. It had to be directly supplied from the distributor to the doctor, who had to fill out forms to sort of validate to the distributor that they got the training. And Eventually, there are states that opened it up to NPs, to PAs, to nurse midwives, but in the beginning, it was super restrictive.
In addition to the REMS, states also have always had numerous specific restrictions on abortion. Some of these we talked about at the top of the episode: mandatory counseling, a 24-hour waiting period, medically unnecessary ultrasounds, and sometimes even sharing state-mandated, inaccurate information about the pill's effects. But as familiarity with the medication grew, doctors realized how safe the medication process really was. The facility in Maine where Julie worked became an early adopter of a new model: telehealth abortion care. Well, sort of. The REMS still meant that Miffy had to be administered in a clinic under the supervision of a doctor. But after over a decade of data showing the safety of the pill, doctors started to realize they didn't need to be there in person. So at Julie's clinic, patients would come to the office in person and take the medicine overseen by the doctor virtually. This was all to get around the fact that in her state, nurses weren't allowed to administer Miffy themselves.
I was providing all of the care and all of the telemedicine and doing all of the things. And the physician would come on virtually, right, from another clinic, would come on and watch the patient swallow the pills, because that's the kind of thing that you have to do if you're in a state where advanced practice clinicians can't provide.
Julie actually ended up being part of a court case to change the law in her state, allowing nurses to provide this medicine. Nurses across the country are fighting for those state-level laws to be changed. Nurses are often just as capable as doctors when it comes to administering medicine. So allowing them to provide mifepristone, a drug proven to be very safe, can help address clinic understaffing problems and expand access to this essential care. Julie succeeded in her fight, and that law changed in Maine. But the virtual workaround her clinic used was a precursor of what was to come. Because true telehealth care, without any travel or physical contact, still had a long way to go until it was accepted as a standard option. In New Jersey, Ruchi has faced challenges in her attempts to implement elements of telehealth care since 2016.
Telehealth was not a thing, and it was starting to be a thing, and people were like, this is not ever going to work, ever. And insurance says that if you come in person, at that time, insurance said if you come in person, you get paid. But if you answer a patient's phone call, you don't get paid.
What telehealth needed was a final push to become normalized in the eyes of insurance providers and the public.
Another day of fast-moving developments in this coronavirus emergency. Tonight, more than 1,300 people sickened in the U.S. At least 39 have died in this country.
That final push came from an unexpected place. As soon as it became clear that coming into the clinic was unsafe, healthcare providers across the country started petitioning for the FDA to loosen the restrictions.
The American Civil Liberties Union has sued the FDA to remove restrictions on the abortion pill.
In April 2021, an ACLU lawsuit prompted the FDA to temporarily lift the in-person requirement for mifepristone. In Julie's experience, this was transformative.
During COVID, we were able to start mailing medications, right? And we were able to do that because it was safer than people coming into the clinics. And many providers just started doing that. And so it opened the opportunity for virtual providers as well, which you'd never had, right?
The doors seemed to be blown wide open for new avenues of patient care. More clinics started experimenting with mailing pills. Mifepristone was so safe and effective, healthcare providers learned that patients didn't need tons of in-person tests to evaluate them for care. Answering some questions to determine a medical history and the stage of pregnancy worked just as well. And the benefits to patients were clear. Here's Christy again.
Certainly nothing good out of COVID. COVID was not good. But if there is one teeny, teeny, tiny silver lining, we did get telehealth abortion pills out of it. It's pretty flexible and allows for people to do whatever feels best for them, right? So say you're a busy college student and you have classes all day long and then you're up late studying and then you're like, oh my gosh, I felt terrible and I just took a pregnancy test in the middle of the night and I need to have an abortion. You can fill those forms out at 2 a.m. if you need to, right? So it's much simpler than if you had to call and drive and go into a clinic. Or possibly there's a clinic just down the street, but they don't have an appointment for 4 weeks. The telehealth options often can get you in like same day or next day. That average cost of an in-person abortion with pills is $600. The cost for our partners ranges from $150 on a sliding scale, so it could be less than $150 to about $300. So, we're looking at a much lower cost for patients. And then childcare, finances, language, medical racism, all of these things sort of play a role in whether or not someone might choose telehealth over going in person.
With the REMS lifted, at least for now, nothing seemed to be standing in providers' way to offer the best quality care. But there was one catch. Insurance doesn't always cover abortion care, or a patient might not have insurance. Abortion funds have been in place for decades to provide resources for abortion access, but some funds are very specific about where they can allocate their money and how much they can give. Virtual care falls outside the boundaries for many of them. Some of the hesitancy to provide this funding may have been rooted in the historical stigma surrounding abortion medication and the unfamiliarity of virtual care in general. Just as it seemed COVID was pushing the medical establishment to reconsider outdated rules around abortion care, there remained this huge cost barrier.
And so we really tried to do outreach and encourage more people and ask more people to help us with this. And it wasn't happening. And so then we started saying, well, maybe we should do this.
In 2022, Christy, Ruchi, and Julie connected and started envisioning a fund of their own, what would become the Abortion Freedom Fund, or AFF. Their vision? A fund made specifically to help provide money and connections for receiving abortion pills by mail and facilitating telehealth abortion care. Christy and Ruchi already worked together, and Christy knew Julie from her pioneering work in telehealth. They found their niche and aimed to fill it directly.
We were looking into do we become a 501c3? Do we find a fiscal sponsor? Two of us had started organizations before, and so we had a little bit of baseline knowledge there.
We were discouraged by some people. Historically, medical professionals are just the ones who are supposed to do the work, not have the control. So what they told us was, it will be too hard for you to start a fund. This is not something that you can manage. You guys should just, keep serving patients and not worry about funding. Someone else can do that for you because you're doing such a huge service to the world by being able to send out these pills, even though we were paying for a lot of those pills out of our own pockets.
The trio pushed on, in spite of the discouragement they faced. What they needed was some initial funding.
We reached out to another organization that's in the repro movement and asked if they could be our fiscal sponsors. And so that was extremely helpful because they were an already established org with some, funding and some internal infrastructure. And so that was amazing to help us get launched.
Christy, Julie, and Ruchi were in the rush of trying to build something from the ground up on unfamiliar turf. And then the Dobbs decision leaked. Christy was at the airport traveling home from a National Abortion Federation conference when she heard.
And I was just devastated. It was sort of like Trump getting elected. You kind of knew it was coming, but you really hoped it wasn't coming. And there have been people in the country, particularly in the South, and people of color who have seen this coming for years and years. And so it wasn't a surprise, but at the same time, you just got that drop in your gut, that this awful thing had happened. And it also just reinvigorated the need to continue to fight for access and also envision a world where we have more and better access than we had prior to Dobbs and with Roe.
And we got together and we all decided that we were going to launch when Dobbs happened, when Roe fell. We were going to launch that day, whether we were ready to or not. And we were not ready to, but we did.
The Abortion Freedom Fund launched on the day the Dobbs decision officially dropped. As protests swept the country, a surge of motivation and support followed.
In particular, that Gen Z for Choice campaign brought in quite a lot of money, but it was like people donating, $1, but there were so many people that money went so far and helped so many people. And we still have people from that campaign and, just in general who are donating like a little bit at a time or have recurring monthly donations. So the grassroots fundraising continues to be hugely important for us for helping our clients.
Grassroots support is essential to the AFF's success. While grants from large donors and organizations are very helpful, those big donors can set requirements and caveats for care recipients. A collection of individual donors lets the AFF provide help in the best possible way. So what does that help look like? The AFF has been designed to subvert the challenges that usually come along with abortion funding.
When folks are calling and trying to get pills, it can take 8 or 10 calls to get funding. And so we wanted to be, as all of us are providers, and we've all seen this happen, and we all wanted to make sure that we could streamline this process as much as possible. And so we wanted to make sure that people weren't having to make multiple calls.
The AFF has connections with local abortion funds and telehealth clinics. Let's say a patient approaches one of the AFF partner clinics or a local abortion fund seeking a telehealth option. The partner will just provide those services or pay for it themselves. That local fund or clinic will bill the AFF later. This allows for streamlined access to care for people seeking abortions. The AFF carefully vets partners and works with values-aligned organizations who provide compassionate care to clients.
So right now we have 13 clinic partners who are offering abortion pills by mail, and then 6 abortion funds, like local abortion funds that we work with, and then advocacy and grassroots partners. By far the biggest thing that we do is paying for abortion pills by mail, but we also try to be involved in the movement in other ways, which is like advocacy and outreach to other orgs, uplifting the work of our partner organizations, doing education to make sure that people know that these options are available to them.
The telehealth process used by the AFF's partners is simple. It only involves filling out a few forms, potentially meeting with a healthcare provider virtually, and receiving a course of medicine in the mail only a couple days later. Today, over 60% of all abortion patients opt for medication abortions. By creating a niche for virtual care, the AFF brings patients a few steps closer to a medical system that isn't foreign and frightening. More funds and clinics than ever are providing the option of telehealth care. The FDA began formally reviewing the REMS in 2021. After a reevaluation, they decided to permanently lift the outdated in-person requirement for mifepristone. They also allowed pharmacies to dispense the medication, which went into effect in 2023. This type of care just might have a brighter future. The challenges that came along with normalizing telehealth abortion care revealed so many of the challenges buried into the healthcare system today. Medicine is political and entrenched in tradition. It's a hard ship to steer. While mailing pills and offering virtual care helps out with many problems,
we are still not reaching everyone who needs an abortion, right?
There's still the digital divide, right? There are people that you still don't reach via telehealth. And it's why I think things like HIPAA-compliant library cubicles in every community should be available, right? People should be able to go in and get their telehealth in a library because some people just don't have access to that. And, and mobile internet vans. There are all kinds of really innovative ideas that we could be doing so that we can help fix some of that digital divide issue that happens. Because really what we're talking about is equity.
Telehealth care itself is imperfect. The decades-long stigma surrounding mifepristone and virtual care as a whole can be hard to shake when there's a much longer history of doing things a different way.
When I first started mailing pills, I was even a little bit thrown off because I'm so used to talking to my patients, connecting with my patients, making sure everything's okay. Do you have any questions? Do you need me to do anything? Is everything okay? Some people were like, I'm not sure. Some people are so many of us, right, are victims of the system that we live in. And they were like, well, I'm not sure that the abortion is over until the doctor tells me that it's over. And I was like, okay, well, I can help you figure that out.
It has taken years of successful care for patients and even doctors alike to reach comfort with virtual abortion care. But now, this new kind of care is finally hitting its stride. Before the Dobbs decision, 4% of all abortions took place via telehealth. As of September 2023, that number jumped to 16%. With Roe overturned, the risk of losing access to abortion for any reason is so much higher. Every win has to be defended, and the REMS has been a legal battleground ever since it entered closer scrutiny during the pandemic. Since the REMS was amended by the FDA, there have been lawsuits against the agency, arguing for both expanding and limiting access to MIFI. And one of those lawsuits escalated. Remember that Supreme Court case I mentioned at the top of the episode? The prosecution in that case is seeking the reinstatement of the original REMS restrictions. Reports show that most of the justices were skeptical of the anti-abortion arguments, and they may not demand to reinstate the REMS. But we won't find out for sure until after this episode airs. Even in the states where abortion is legal, there's still national decisions that could impact everyone. Thanks to the work from organizations like the AFF, abortion pills by mail will continue to be available to patients in need across the US. And there's more you can do to defend these rights.
One of the things I would love to see people do is talk to everyone in their community, talk to everyone who they know about telehealth, medication abortion, and medication abortion in general, right? And talk about the safety and the efficacy and even the safety around self-managed abortion. And just really get that information out there because people need to know that this is really safe and effective. Calling up your local funds and asking them if their funding goes for a virtual provision of care. And then supporting those funds, supporting the National Network of Abortion Funds, just generally, is always great.
Get in contact with your local abortion clinic and volunteer to escort patients in and out of the clinic. You can contact your local abortion fund. They often need volunteers to answer hotlines or do some of that other practical support. Protesting, of course. I sort of hate to be the person who says vote, but we got to try to keep voting. There's so many things that we can be doing to continue to fight for abortion access in the country.
There's so many forces at work trying to restrict abortion rights and access. That can feel really disheartening or hopeless. But even within these systems, people are finding a way to leverage the power of grassroots communities to raise funds, challenge what's possible, and fill in the gaps to provide access to essential care. You can learn more about the Abortion Freedom Fund and how you can support organizations fighting for reproductive rights at actblue.com/buildthechange. See you next time. Build the Change is created in partnership with ActBlue, produced by Wonder Media Network, and hosted by me, Alok Vadmanan. Our production team includes Edie Allard, Lindsay Cradowell, Sarah Schleet, Abby Delk, Hannah Bottom, and Paloma Moreno Jimenez. Our executive producer is Jenny Kaplan. Our showrunners are Rohita Javangula and Maria Jose Hurtado.